Okie dokie. We are close to wrapping up 2020. Oh my gosh, it has been an epic year. And if you are celebrating the solstice or Christmas, I wish you a very happy holidays. Today, I have an action packed episode for you where we are going to cover the great Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. Probably the one, well, there's been a bunch of huge events in 2020, right? But the last big event of 2020 that is ushering in a new season, a new world, a new evolution for us. Aloha! Welcome to the Savvy Luminary, an astrology podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, an Aquarius boss woman, a brand designer, and business astrologer. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers just like you reach your highest potential and become the luminaries you are star charted to be. Well, hello, everybody. It's Leslie Tagorda, your brand astrologer and designer. And oh my gosh, I have so much to share with you today. Today we are going to be covering this great Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. And I hope what ends up happening is that I leave you feeling inspired about the energies that we have coming up, right? And, I hope you feel really optimistic, not in the sense of like keeping just this positive bright light, but really about trusting and having faith that we are on the right path. So in today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on the Jupiter Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius that happens on December 21st, the same day as solstice. I'm going to be talking about what it is, why it's so important, what it means for us as a collective, meaning every single citizen on this Mother Earth, what you're going to do with this energy in your business, and how to personalize this activation in your life so you can really feel into what this energy wants you to expand and evolve. Okie dokie. So before we get into all of this magic, oh my gosh, all of this power, I wanted to invite you to an absolutely free workshop that I will be doing on Tuesday, December 22nd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm calling it 2021 in the Stars, where I'm going to give you an overview of all of the astrological events that are coming up that we get to look forward to, that we get to understand the energy so that we can work with this star wisdom instead of against it. So please join me for this free event. You can sign up at thesavvyluminary.com/2021. So that's 2021. Thesavvyluminary.com 2021. And of course, if you haven't yet received my 2 new books, Star Powered Brand, that helps you become the luminous leader you were born to be, or New Moon Rituals for Entrepreneurs, the 2021 edition, so you can design your success with the power of the moon. They are available on my website as well as on Amazon. So if you're in Europe or you live out of the United States and shipping is just kind of crazy, I totally understand. Head over to Amazon.com and search for Star Powered Brand or New Moon Rituals for Entrepreneurs. You will find both the paperback version as well as the Kindle ebook version so that you can gain this wisdom of the stars. Phew. So let's just take a deep breath before we get into all of the things that Jupiter and Saturn have in store for us. I'd like us to center our thoughts. If you would you please, ground your feet on the ground and take a beautiful clearing breath, right? You're here, you're making time to understand the wisdom of the stars. And I'd like this to be the theme for our episode, okay? So if you would please take a deep breath and repeat after me. I have space to expand my capacity for sustainable, equitable growth in my brand. I have space to expand my capacity for sustainable, equitable growth in my brand. How does that feel? For me, I'm really actually kind of excited. I was talking to a friend earlier this week, and we were talking about just that transition from Capricorn to Aquarius, right? Anytime there is like one of these slow moving planets, like Saturn takes, about 3 years to go through each sign, right as it's leaving one sign to the next, when it's right just sitting on that 29th degree, it is bringing up all of the shadows, right? It's bringing up all of that old kind of grief and all the things, the shadow sides of that energy. And, for most people, they don't really have a very good relationship with Saturn anyway. And Saturn in Capricorn, all the things, old school ways of doing things, hard work, heavy structures, those kinds of things. So I know that for a lot of us, this past week has felt really, really heavy as Saturn transitioned from Capricorn into Aquarius. And so I was talking to my friend about that, and she's like, oh my gosh, yes. And Saturn is also squaring my natal Venus, and my creativity feels like this wet blanket. And I was like, oh, Saturn is squaring your Venus. How exciting. She kind of, we were on the phone, but I could hear her rolling her eyes basically, because I could hear her saying, oh, you're always the optimist. And I was like, yeah, but think about it, right? Saturn is restriction. Saturn is commitment. And when it's squaring Venus, our ability to be creative and to add value, the square is a creative tension. It's this friction that, yes, you're going to put in some hard work. It's going to feel like a challenge, but the result of really digging in and pushing through that creative tension, she's going to have like the most amazing results, better off than if she was just having a trine, right? If she can like really look at the understanding of like, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this quote unquote challenging square, and look at it by like, oh, I'm supposed to dig into this. My results are going to be so much more fruitful, so much more exciting. I finally convinced her. I could still hear her rolling her eyes, but I do hope that in a year like 2020, when we have all really felt these challenges, I'm going up and down in my grief as well. It's that we're not supposed to dismiss the grief, and we're not supposed to dismiss that sense of dread, or dismiss all of those hard feelings. But we're also not supposed to like go down that spiral of despair. Instead, we're meant to get really curious with the energy and understand what that energy has to teach us, and how it's really fuel that we can use, that we can turn back and compost into our lives and bring back forward into this beautiful fertilized soil in which growth really, really happens. All right. So with all of that said, let's talk about the great Jupiter Saturn conjunction. So, what the heck is Jupiter Saturn conjunction? For those of us, who've been like following astrology for a while, like the internet has been like lit up with Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius, Jupiter and Saturn meet in Aquarius. And so this great conjunction is the third and the final big aspects of 2020, right? When we think about the big aspects in a year, we're looking at the relationship between outer planets. And Jupiter and Saturn are like the beginning of the outer planets. They're actually called the collective planets. So we feel them as a collective, like every single person on Earth is feeling them somehow. You know that Jupiter represents vision and expansiveness and optimism and gratitude. It also represents things like justice and philosophy and far-reaching exploration. And Saturn represents contraction. It represents discipline, responsibility, structures, systems. And both of these planets have been in the sign of Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So you can see how over the last few years, this idea of Capricorn, achievement, structure, success, top-down governments, top-down businesses, all of these things, we are saying goodbye. And, if these kinds of old systems worked for you, good for you. But for the, you are in a very, very small minutia of the population that hasn't really benefited from these really oppressive systems. And so Jupiter and Saturn meet like clockwork every 20 years. And that's why sometimes you hear astrologers call Jupiter and Saturn the time lords, because like clockwork, they meet every 20 years. And like clockwork, they will cycle through that 20 years meeting in an element. So for the last 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn have been meeting in earth signs. Now, if you're really following astrology, you know that in 1981, Jupiter and Saturn met in Libra, but right before they changed permanently to the 200 years, about 40 years before that 200-year period, they will dip their toe into the following element, right? But that was definitely the outlier. And the outlier happens every 200 years or so. But anyway, going back. So Jupiter and Saturn have been meeting in earth elements for the last 200 years. And so you know that earth from a global scale represents our creative, like the physical resources that we create. It represents the mother earth. It represents all the things and the structures that we want to build. So you can see that in the last 200 years, humanity has really figured out how to consume, how to create the industrial period, all of this technology, and also did some real major damage to the earth. Like we will be paying about for, the destruction to the soil, destruction to the environment. Oh my gosh, everything is coming to a head with this unchecked use of the resources of Mother Earth. But now Jupiter and Saturn will be meeting in Aquarius. Aquarius, oh my gosh, just freedom loving Aquarius. Aquarius is future forward. It is social impact and community and shared resources and humanity. It's all of these wonderful things that when I think of like utopia, I think of Aquarian ideals of shared resources, equitable success, right? And so the last time Saturn and Jupiter met in Aquarius was in 1405. The British astrologer Pam Gregory, and you hear me reference her quite a bit because I just love her energy. On her latest YouTube video, she was talking about how in 1405 we had a flowering of ideas that was represented in like the Renaissance, right? All these different paintings and music and literature, all these wonderful kind of cultural ideals came to be. And now that we are, 800 years later, looking at what cycle is beginning with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius at 0 degrees, to me, I believe we are also in this flowering of air, and air represents, society, socializing, technology, intellect, knowledge. So I'm curious for you what you think, but I think this is going to be this huge burst of finally using technology and people having access to technology, not just a few, more socially equitable use of technology and resources and shared information. Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is still in Taurus. And so hopefully we are going to learn how to use new technology as well as ancient technology. I can just feel there's like this boom of ancient technology and indigenous technology and ancient wisdom that is coming forth to help us restore the land, Uranus and Taurus, right? But thinking about Jupiter and Saturn again, about how are we moving into a more equitable future, right? Now, a conjunction is when at the beginning of the beginning of a new cycle. And once something new happens, right, we still have a lot of old things to break down and, take things to the dump or put things back into the compost or put things back into recycling, right? We have a lot of all that breaking down to do because Pluto is still going to be in Capricorn until 2024. And then after 2024, Pluto's going to be moving into Aquarius, which is really going to allow us to bring all of this to the fore. So you can see we have a couple of years to go. Maybe we're going to see reparations for certain people in this world. Maybe we're going to see the rise of the spiritual entrepreneur, for non-binary leadership, diverse equality. Maybe we'll be seeing things like even the rise of equal currency. If you've been following Bitcoin, or if you've been following any kind of cryptocurrencies, these currencies are global currencies. That you're not getting fees when you're converting things between different countries. And some people really see this as kind of the equality and access to money for everyone. So really, we are at a new, the astrology of next week, and of course of all 2020, is really tied into this, because on the 21st, right, that's when Jupiter and Saturn meet on the 21st. We also have the solstice. And the solstice, for, millennia, people have been looking to the solstice, regardless if you're in the Northern Hemisphere or in the Southern Hemisphere. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, the solstice represents the shortest day and the longest night. But then after the solstice, we get this more light, right? That's why it's such a magical time. And we have all of these festivals that have to do with lights and candles. And in the Southern Hemisphere, it represents the longest day and the shortest night, where dark starts to come back. And we have this beautiful equilibrium that we build towards the equinoxes, right? But where the Western astrology is really focused on the Northern Hemisphere, and for whatever reason, it works for our brothers and sisters in Australia, our siblings in Australia and New Zealand, and in the Southern Hemisphere. So we'll have a different conversation about that later. But we just had this very powerful week, and I feel like the anticipation and the climax of the entire year, this is what we have been waiting for, the beginning of a new era. On the day before, on Sunday, December 20th, we're going to have Mercury entering Capricorn. Mercury was kind of zipping through Sagittarius. We had all these wonderful inspirational visions, and now Mercury is like going to really ground our thoughts in reality, right? So our thoughts turn from loftiness and aspirations, and now ground these aspirations into our reality, right? So we can start to really build the structures for our future. So as this happens the day before the solstice, we are really able to clearly think about the structures that we want to bring into our lives, right? So think about how our thought processes really need this grounding, like bringing all of that vision into this earth. And then not only do we have the solstice on the same day as the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, but we also have our moon going into the second quarter phase. And, if you've done your new moon intentions before, you know that the second quarter phase is time to take action, right? Now, taking action at this time of year, because we've had so many things, may just look like committing to being, right? Things are a little bit topsy-turvy. So, even though the moon is in Aries and wants to move forward, trust your intuition, look into your body, feel into your body with what you really need to lead. So then on the 21st also, so first the moon goes into its second quarter phase, then at 2:02 a.m. Pacific and 5:02 a.m. the sun moves into Capricorn, signaling our solstice, right? This really feels like, to me, the most powerful day of the most powerful year, right? I've been talking about how 2020 has just been like a year like no other. And when the sun enters this cardinal sign of Capricorn, we welcome the solstice, right? And we welcome in magic and wisdom. It feels like a powerful day. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of this birthing into this new era, which, solstice on top of this conjunction, it's like, I mean, I don't even know how to talk about it, what visual I have for it, but I can imagine you feel it as like just this huge burst of energy. And then, so I've been talking about this Jupiter Saturn conjunction as an expanded spiritual social consciousness. It's really like this new era is being born. And so while you're already listening to this, we've been feeling this orb for a while, right? Saturn and Jupiter have already been in the sky. If you can see them in the sky. It's so beautiful already. I've been watching them night by night get closer and closer and closer. And even all the children in the neighborhood in the park, will look at Saturn and Jupiter and Saturn in the sky and just marvel at their brightness and their beauty. But for a few weeks now, they've been so close together that in all effects, they are in orb in terms of this new evolution, but they meet at the exact same degree of 0 degrees and 29 minutes, so almost 1 degree, at 10:21 a.m. Pacific and 1:21 p.m. Eastern, a few hours after solstice. Oh my gosh, this meeting of the great Time Lords to me invokes a spiritual evolution that will inform the next 20 years with hopefulness, future thinking, and humanitarian Aquarius energies, right? Until Jupiter and Saturn again meet in the next 20 years, but really more so than just 20 years of thinking about this hopefulness and future thinking and shared resources. This is really setting the stage for the next 200 years, right? This energy is heightened and ripe with new energy that I hope all of us can raise our aspirations to keep our eyes on faith and dreams and future thinking so that we can all innovate for a social justice and a social equity, social causes, right? And so this is really asking us, what is the power that we individually need to create this new world? And later on, we're going to get deeper into what will you build with your vision and your work that will benefit us all. Later on the week, on Wednesday, on the 23rd, we'll have Mars in Aries squaring with Pluto in Capricorn. That'll be exact. You're probably already feeling it by the time you're listening to this. And so really feel into that tension, right? This tension is, again, that square, that fuel that you need to burn so that you can distill what motivates you, right? Be patient because, Mars wants to drive forward and Pluto is like, just amplifying that. So I know in California, we are being asked to shelter in place again. Oh my gosh, that's totally Mars and Pluto, right? At a square, because we want to go out, we want to celebrate, we want to see our friends. Because of COVID, we are being asked to stay in place. So get curious with these inconveniences. What do you notice that, have some impact on you that really feel like inconveniences, but maybe are truly gifts that you maybe can't really just see yet? And then the day before Christmas, we are going to have Mercury in Capricorn trining with Uranus in Taurus. Oh my gosh. So I think this is a chance for, sending out all of your love notes into the world, to your family, to your clients, because to me, this messaging, right? Mercury and our thoughts and the way we speak will be really grounded. It'll feel really responsible, yet it will be very innovative because it's trining with Taurus. It's time to give thanks to the earth for all of the resources that have supported you and made your life more merry, right? You can think about how the earth then manifests for you with your friends and your families and your communities. So how can you thank all of these people, all of these energies that have supported you, and start thinking about how can you also help restore the earth and to help make a promise to make a difference with renewable resources for all. So you can see how all of this astrology is really supporting this Jupiter Saturn conjunction. So why is this so important, right? During this week, we have, the solstice. It's a week after the total eclipse, which kind of like shook us all up and kind of allowed us to reflect a little bit, but also might have put us on a different path. And this ends the big bang of a year with yet another big bang, a new beginning. So, I want us to think about these new beginnings. if you are a mom or you've had some like really epic status change in your life, I became a mom pretty late in my life at 41. And if you're a mom, you have all of these energies in you before you become a mom for the first time. You are super excited about what's going to happen and meeting your new child. For me, I had a lot of grief because I was also, I was grieving my dad that just passed, but I was also grieving this life that, in just a short 9 months, I was being asked to transform into a mom when after 41 years, I've only known how to be an independent woman. And we are experiencing this transition. And anytime we're in a transition, right, we're making sense of the unknown because every day is so different. And then when you have the baby, there is this kind of sense of awakening, right? And this process is not like this overnight process. I mean, my child is almost 5 years old, and I'm finally feeling like I'm through the transition of understanding what it is to be a mom. For me, it was a really, really long transition. So you can see that anytime there is something new, we have to let go. We have to say goodbye to the old. So, using the mom example again, we have to say goodbye to our freedoms. We have to say goodbye to the life that we had known before having a child. We have to say hello to being responsible for another human being, being committed, right? So, excitement, grief, transition, awakening, all of these things are happening at once. And if you think about this for 2020, every single person in the planet Earth has experienced all of this. And this last Jupiter Saturn conjunction feels like the expanse. Like, okay, we are done with the birthing process. Here we are. You are now a mom, a proud owner of a new system for which you will be responsible for. Ta-da! So to me, when I look at this collectively as, as a new Earth, as a citizen of this planet Earth, as we are all bringing in this new baby of a new paradigm, I am seeing the awakening, the arise of the spiritual entrepreneur. Oh my gosh, it just warms my heart to see how many entrepreneurs there are there making livings out of their intuitive gifts or using their intuitive gifts in otherwise traditional business aspects, right? I'm also seeing the rise of the feminine or soft power leadership. It just warms my heart to see so many women, so many people of color, so many non binary people that have been elected to political office in this last year. I'm also seeing this beautiful rise of equality and understanding that life isn't binary, that we exist in this beautiful spectrum of all of the infinite possibilities, that we're becoming really appreciative of individuality and uniqueness instead of like pointing out differences because we all have more similarities than differences. And I'm also seeing this beautiful rise of shared resources. We've been seeing this trend for a few years, even though this year is kind of shaky with, like shared cars and shared homes and shared bicycles and all kinds of things like that. But I believe that we're going to continue to see this. So, all of this collectively, what does this mean for you? Right? To me, in your business, as we are looking at and assessing this Jupiter Saturn conjunction, this is an evolution, an expanding of capacity, right? Saturn, again, is about our structures, but this Saturn in Aquarius now is yes about structures, yes about consistency and showing up, but it's also about sustainability. It's also about sharing equity and empowering others. Oh my gosh. So, to me, the businesses that I see really rising are ones that value the evolution of success, right? And to me, the evolution of success means that, hey, success is different for all of us, right? Getting curious with ourselves and understanding what does success mean to mean to you, right? And if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me talk about the moon sign, and there's areas of our second house and Venus and all these different kind of clues to what does success really mean to you, and what does that success look like in the outer world? Because success now isn't just like profiteering and like stepping over people at all costs. That is not success. So we have evolved this understanding of success. So what does that look like for you in your business, right? I'm also seeing this Jupiter and Saturn conjunction as the evolution of understanding our purpose and mission in society. Oh my gosh. Yes, I know that's big. Right? I mean, it's Aquarius, and we run our businesses as a service to others, whether or not we are there to educate or inspire or serve or help or support. Whatever your role is in service to others is really us understanding our capacity and really elevating that purpose so that we can really contribute our wisdom into society as service to others. I'm also seeing the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction as the evolution of actualizing and recognizing yourself as successful. I've seen myself talk about this to a lot of people lately as I look at their charts. One of the common themes that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is that we're always looking outwards and we're always looking at others who we deem more successful as us. And we're never looking at our own success and recognizing our own success. We dismiss others that look up to us. There's so many people that see us already as successful, but the key to being successful is actually seeing yourself as successful. Oh my gosh, this little paradigm thought, I'm just going to say that again because I think it's one of these most important things that as you evolve in your business, as you want to serve others, as you want to expand your capacity and grow your success, the key to that is that you must see yourself as successful, right? Please, you are successful. One of these things also in your business and recognizing where Jupiter and Saturn conjoin in your business is this evolution of recognizing your unique superpowers. Just like success, yes, you have unique superpowers, and it is your job to recognize those superpowers. It is your job to work in those superpowers and to multiply and increase and maximize your ability to work in those unique superpowers. We are all gifted with unique superpowers that this world needs. And so I really feel that this is part of your evolutionary process. And lastly, in your business, oh my gosh, what does this mean with this Jupiter and Saturn conjunction? To me, it also means the evolution of devoting and committing yourself to this collective evolution. There's no going back, right? There's no going back. There's only going forward. So devote yourself to the trust and the patience and the hope, the commitment, the meaning, the optimism that you need, because all of those things are ingredients that you personally need to face the uncertainty, to live in the discomfort of evolution. So let's talk about that a little bit. On a personal level, to hold all of this capacity, right? You're going to need trust, right? You're going to need trust that all of the experiences, challenging, fun, difficult, intense, optimistic, you're going to have to trust that you needed this experience to get you where you need to be, that you are not a victim of that experience, that indeed that experience was a gift for you to get curious with and to understand. So trust is one key ingredient you will need as we go into this new future. The second thing that you'll need is patience. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think we're pretty good at patience in 2020 by now, right? I've seen drastic changes from, the most committed people, some clients who are very like type A and are like, okay, get this and meet this deadline and blah, 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 blah. I've seen their patience just come over, right? And just be like, okay, well, I did my best and I still couldn't make that deadline. And you know what? It's okay. I'll be okay with it. And so, patience is another energy that we're really going to need to cultivate to expand our capacity. The next one is curiosity, right? Curiosity goes back with this idea of trust that, you know what? We are going to all have challenging experiences. Some more challenging than others, right? And instead of like going down the spiral of despair, instead getting curious about it, understanding the lessons that we are supposed to gain and the meaning of this in the greater scheme of our lives. I would say that growing up, I didn't have a very easy childhood. And I look back at my childhood, I recognized at a really young age that we could choose happiness. And so when I look back at my challenging childhood, I can, yeah, there's certain things that are sad, but I don't dwell on there as a victim of my childhood. I'm super, super grateful because I learned at an early age that we have choice. And so that's what I mean by this idea of meaning, gaining curiosity for all experiences so that we can understand the greater meaning. This gives us this eagle eye view that we need when we're creating our new future, when we're creating our new vision. Then, of course, there is commitment, right? Jupiter, Saturn. Saturn is about commitment. Jupiter, normally, wherever Jupiter goes, it's like showering its blessings. But to me, the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is going to have the most meaning for the people that have already been putting in the work. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. Putting in the work doesn't mean that you're just hustle, hustle, hustle and not resting. That's not what I mean. But it's that if things don't go as planned or you make mistakes, that you're still continuing to get up and learning and showing up and committing to what you said that you were going to do. That is a huge ingredient. And then, of course, all of this adds up to optimism and faith. Again, optimism, not just being positive for positive sakes, but for understanding that there has to be something better, to keeping your eye on the higher target, to leading your life with love and faith instead of despair. Right. So, on a personal level, I hope that all of you can embrace these ideas as we go into even more uncertain times, but trusting that there is a better future, having patience as that future presents itself, being curious with every experience that comes so that we can understand the meaning of those experiences in our lives and businesses. Also, being able to commit to showing up and getting better each time with anything that we put our businesses out to do or our personal goals out to do. And then, of course, keeping your vibration high with optimism and faith, even when things get challenging, by understanding and really diving into those hard feelings, not dismissing those hard feelings, but understanding them, getting meaning from them so that you can keep your eye forward and your chin high. Okay, so what the heck are we going to do with all of this expansive energy in our business and our work, right? I know that you're already feeling this need to evolve, this need to look towards the future, this need to expand your capacity for sustainable, equitable growth, right? So, as we start to look at how to apply these energies in our personal natal charts, I want you to start thinking about these general themes that work for all of us, every single person on this planet, right? So we're looking towards new technologies that are available to all, right? all social justice. We are looking in our business and brands on how to create belonging, but also to join in groups and to revel in the intersectionality of all of those groups, right? Aquarian ideal is about groups and societies and communities, right? So, how do we build in that equity and belonging through our businesses and our brands, right? I bet you have some ideas there. And then, of course, our commitment to social justice. And where does our business or our brand fit into this ideal of social justice, right? So these are amazing things that we can do with our businesses in 2020 and beyond. So with social justices, with social justice, if you haven't already begun your journey, this is a great time for you to start. It is a great time to get really curious and understand your own biases. We all have them. Also, a really great place to start is understanding your privileges. Again, we all have some kind of privilege. And how do we use that privilege, right? How do we use that? Are we sharing that privilege and power with others? Are we enabling and empowering others with that privilege by sharing that privilege? So these are some really big concepts, but I hope that in a little way they are planting those seeds of future forward thinking so that we can all build our capacity for sustainable, equitable growth. So I'm going to be talking about personalizing this activation of a new future, Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, so that you can gain insight on how to direct your business's evolution, right? There were a bunch of people in my free Facebook group, the Savvy Luminary, who had all kinds of wonderful questions that informed the answers to how to personalize. So I hope that, Tammy and Sandra and Karen and Rachel and Diana, oh my gosh, I hope that I am able to answer your questions that you had in the Savvy Luminary about how to use this energy. So I know you're already feeling this huge activation, right? It's been such a powerful year, right? So for those of us who have really been already putting in the consistent work, Saturn, right, will certainly be feeling this huge need to expand, Jupiter, right? For some of us, this could even mean greatness. Like I know for me, I've been feeling this huge tipping point with my work. And, in 2020, just showing up consistently every week, sharing the star wisdom through these podcasts. And, Jeff and I have been working so hard with, on social media and sharing all this information. I feel like this is a tipping point, at least for me, with this Aquarius Jupiter Saturn conjunction. So I want you to notice the people that you've seen have really epic years. And I want you to also see the people that had really challenging years, right? They go hand in hand. If there's anything that I've learned from 2020 is that the pendulum swings wide, that the more success that you've had, more than likely you've had an equal challenge, right? And so it's not for us to run away from challenges because we want to have, big challenges and big successes because we have the capacity to hold it all, right? I'm sure you've seen that the people who have been doing their shadow work, right? The shadow work meaning like going to therapy, understanding their blocks, or, working through really hard things and mindsets and all kinds of things. If you've been one of these people doing your shadow work this year, oh my gosh, I know that you had some epic breakthroughs, right? Also, the people that are really having greatness this year, I've noticed, are the people that have already been doing the social and equitable work. I noticed that, I'm in a musical quintet and we also do some advocacy work. And the executive director and French horn founder of our group, Armando Castellano, he's been doing equitable work and social justice work in the music sphere for over 15 years. And I just see him rising and shining this year. I've seen this with so many people in the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that they've already started and committed to doing this work many years ago, And for the glory of it all, they are seeing the light on their work because they were committed to sharing their wisdom. They were committing to doing their own work of understanding, and they were already doing the work of empowering others. And now in this year, everything is amplifying. Oh my gosh, it makes my heart fill with joy. So, think about, have you been putting in the consistent work so that you could expand Saturn and Jupiter? It is not too late if you haven't yet started. So get started now. So I know a lot of us have been asking about activations by planet, right? So for all of us that have Aquarius energies, right? This is really, we are going to feel this a lot, right? Especially if you have any energies that are close to 0 degrees Aquarius. So, Aquarius 0 degrees to 5 degrees, or even back through the late degrees of Capricorn, you're really going to be feeling this huge need to expand. Now, if you have any fixed energies, also Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, right? If you think of them on the chart, all of those fixed energies, those are all creating those squares or oppositions, right? So if you have any energies in Leo, by opposition, you're getting illuminated on all the things that you want to expand. And if you have Taurus and Scorpio, there's all of these exterior events and challenges that are coming into your life that are forcing you to expand, right? And if you have Aquarius, this is just a natural sense of expansion. If you have any air signs, any planets in the air signs like Gemini and Libra, of course, Aquarius, those are going to feel supportive, right? All of those air signs about socializing and sharing information, all of those, like Gemini is going to allow you to communicate your ideas even better, and all your Libra energies are going to enable you to be connected to the right people even better. As Jupiter moves through 2021, Jupiter is going to be activating all of your Aquarian energies. Whatever Jupiter touches, it expands, right? And so that's why it's really important for us to keep optimistic, because if you're feeling fearful and if you're feeling victimized, as Jupiter goes over your Aquarian energies, you know what? Jupiter is just going to amplify any of those things. So make sure you keep your spirits and your vibration really, really high. And so Jupiter is going to be leaving Aquarius at the very end of 2021 in December. So if you have any Aquarian energies, again, any place in Aquarius, any energies, any planets, any angles in Aquarius, expect to have blessings in that particular energy over the course of 2021. Now Saturn, right? Saturn and Jupiter are in Aquarius, and Saturn is going to take a little bit longer. So Saturn is going to take about 3 years. It's not going to move out of Aquarius into Pisces until March of 2023. And so whatever Saturn touches in your chart, right, through Aquarius, right? If you have, your sun or your moon, or actually any of your planets in Aquarius, over the next 3 years, Saturn is going to be pinging them, activating them, touching them. And wherever Saturn is going to touch in Aquarius, it's going to, sometimes people get worried about Saturn because, it feels constrictive. But to me, I'm looking at this Saturn as activating this sense of sustainability, activating the sense of commitment, and activating the sense of responsibility. So let's all remember to look at the highest the highest interpretation of these energies when we're looking through our for the next 3 years with Saturn going through Aquarius. So I want you to check your chart again. Look to 0 degrees of Aquarius. And then, of course, look to any planets that you might have in Aquarius, and also look to any angles you might have in 0 degrees of Aquarius. So if you have an angle would mean your rising sign, which is the first house cusp, or your descendant, which is the 7th house cusp, your midheaven, which is the 10th house cusp, and your imam coli or IC at the very bottom, your 4th house cusp. You can even just think of these like 4 points as kind of like the compass rose on your chart, right? If you have 0 degrees on any of these angles, oh my goodness, you are so feeling it. It's like really like your whole ship. If your business and your life was a huge big ship in the middle of the ocean, the 0 degrees activation is like it's shifting your entire life. It's not a coincidence that lots of people with 0 degrees on or fixed signs on any of the angles are coming out of the woodwork lately and asking, hey, what's going on for me? What's going on for me? Because they are feeling it. I hear you. Like if you have 0 degrees on any of these angles, especially if you have it on the rising sign or descendant, that kind of horizon, your relationships are really coming to the fore. And how can you evolve your relationships? This can be your personal committed relationships like your partner, or it can be business committed relationships with like your ideal customers or contractors. Relationships and your leadership is really coming into the fore, and you're being asked to expand there. Now, if you have an activation on your midheaven or your imam coli, right, the root to rise idea, you hear me always talking about root to rise, your purpose and your status in the 10th house. But being, enabling expansion there can only happen if your roots are really grounded and rooted so that you can support all of this top expansion. So you can't expand at the top with your purpose and your status and your public life if you're not firmly rooted and grounded in your own personal and private life. So if you have 0 degrees on your midheaven or your IC with this activation, oh my gosh, you are really feeling this need to root and rise, to feel really secure in yourself so that you can go out and live your purposeful life. And you may probably indeed have some kind of status change, whether or not you become a new parent or a homeowner or, get a new job or something like that. There's going to be something that suggests some kind of big status change like that. And now, if you don't have any planets in Aquarius, or if you don't have any angles in Aquarius, you still have 0 degrees of Aquarius somewhere in your chart. And the house in which 0 degrees of Aquarius occupies is where in your life and your business you are meant to expand your capacity for sustainable and equitable. Remember this growth, this idea of growth and Jupiter expansion. Growth needs a structure. Otherwise, it gets too wide and too unruly, right? So that structure is Saturn, a trellis, if you will. You've heard me talk about the trellis and this idea of a beautiful jasmine bush growing and climbing a trellis. For jasmine to grow, it needs that structure and that framework. Growth also needs nourishment, and nourishment looks like rest. It looks like consistency. It looks like commitment, and it also looks like ease, right? Nourishment is knowing when it's time to work and when it's time to rest, when it's time to dig in and when it's time to reflect. That is the nourishment and the sustainability that growth needs. Growth also needs light. It needs the faith and the optimism and the trust and the patience that things need to grow in its own time without rushing. And growth also needs water. And you know that in astrology, water represents emotional security and safety. Where are you with your emotions and how connected are you to your intuition? So, the reason why I bring all of this up is because you are going to be adding all of this to your capacity for sustainable and equitable growth. And so, structure, nourishment, light, and water. So let's check it. So if you have 0 degrees of Aquarius, right, you're looking to which house is being activated. This is where in your life and business, you are going to expand your capacity for sustainable, equitable growth. All right. So if your 0 degrees of Aquarius is in the first house, you are really looking to expand your brand identity and your ability and capacity to be a leader, a future forward leader. If your 0 degrees of Aquarius is in the second house, you are expanding your capacity for financial freedom and of living your brand values and adding value to your work. If your 0 degrees of Aquarius is in the third house, you are here to expand your capacity for inspirational communications and shared teaching. You have a humanitarian need. Like, people need to know, society needs to know what you have to share. And so you're going to have to figure out how to increase your capacity to communicate your wisdom. If 0 degrees of Aquarius is in your fourth house, you are being asked to expand your capacity to feel emotional groundedness, because you are being asked to root so that you can rise higher. If your 0 degrees of Aquarius is in the fifth house, you're being asked to expand your capacity to embody pleasure and joy and creative purpose in all of your shared projects. If you have 0 degrees in your sixth house, you are being asked to expand your capacity for tech-forward, effective systems that will allow you to serve many while taking care of your own health. If you have 0 degrees of Aquarius in the seventh house, oh my goodness, you are being asked to expand your capacity to hold space for all of your wonderful collaborations with social justice co-creators. If your 0 degrees of Aquarius is in the eighth house, you are being asked to expand your capacity to transform and heal using equitable and sustainable wisdom traditions. Oh my gosh, that is so powerful to heal. And healing can look like a bunch of different things. It might not just be spiritual healing or physical healing. This could also be like healing with like finances and healing like business ideals or healing business structures. There's so many things that can use transformation. And if you have 0 degrees of Aquarius in your ninth house, you have a big responsibility, because you will be expanding your global reach and visibility, because you have to teach your philosophical and inspirational ideals. If you have 0 degrees of Aquarius in your 10th house, you are creating space and capacity to amplify the delivery of your ultimate social mission on the global stage. Oh, just a little one, you know? If you have 0 degrees of Aquarius in your 11th house, you are here to increase your capacity so that you can create international social impact and international community building, global community building. And lastly, if you have Aquarius of 0 degrees in the 12th house, you are here to expand your capacity to hold ease and flow in your work and creating rest in your own unique way, probably some way that has to do with technology or ancient technology. So that was a lot, and I hope you are really feeling inspired by all of the wonderful things that we have to look forward to with this new beginning of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Remember that I'm hosting a free workshop on Tuesday, December 22nd at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, called 2021 in the Stars, and you are invited. I'm going to be sharing with you everything that you have to look forward to in 2021 and how we can use the cosmic cycles of 2021 in our business and brand in empowering ways. So head over to thesavvyluminary.com/2021 to get your free RSVP. All right. Thank you so much for making time and space for me as we talk about the great Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So let's release the energy and repeat our mantra after me. I have space to expand my capacity for sustainable, equitable growth in my brand. I have space to expand my capacity for sustainable, equitable growth in my brand. All right, until next time, thank you. Mahalo for listening to this brand new podcast. If you enjoyed learning about astrology for entrepreneurs, help me spread the word by sharing this podcast with your business besties, and hop over to the Savvy Luminary for links to episode notes and our free Facebook community where you can send me questions about astrology or branding, as well as connect with other like-minded businesses.